She didn't know the doctor who saved her life was the daughter her billionaire CEO husband gave up for adoption. The name on the emergency board made Dr. Isla Reeves's heart stop. Vivian Monroe, critical condition, internal bleeding, or 3. Her hands trembled as she stared at those 2 words, Vivian Monroe. The woman bleeding out 3 floors above her was the mother who had given her away 30 years ago. Isla stood frozen in the hallway, nurses rushing past her, alarms blaring, her mind screaming at her to move, to decide, to do something. Dr. Chen appeared beside her, already in scrubs, ready to take the case, ready to let Isla walk away. But Isla heard herself say the words that would change everything. I'll take it. 4 hours later, hands covered in her birth mother's blood, Isla would stand in that recovery room and hear the woman who abandoned her say the words that would shatter 3 decades of carefully constructed lies. No children. It wasn't in the cards for us. And Isla would have to decide. Stay silent, or destroy a billionaire's empire with 3 simple words. I'm your daughter. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment when fate decided that the woman who gave Isla life would need Isla to save hers. Have you ever wondered what you would do if you came face to face with the person who changed your life forever? Someone who doesn't even know you exist? Someone who made a choice 30 years ago that shaped every single day of your existence? Isla had played this moment in her mind 1,000 times, the confrontation, the questions, the anger, the tears. But she never imagined it would happen like this, with her birth mother unconscious on a gurney, with her life hanging by a thread only Isla could see. If you've ever felt abandoned, if you've ever wondered why someone didn't choose you, if you've ever had to decide between revenge and redemption, then you need to hear this story. Because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about forgiveness, family, and second chances. So hit that subscribe button right now, because this story has more twists than you can imagine, and trust me, you won't see the ending coming. Now, let me tell you how we got here. The day started like any other Tuesday at Mount Sinai Hospital. Isla arrived at 6 in the morning, coffee in hand, her mind already running through the day's surgical schedule. 2 appendectomies, 1 gallbladder removal, a hernia repair, routine procedures. The kind that let her mind wander while her hands worked with practiced precision. She had been a surgeon for 5 years now. Trauma surgery, the kind where every second counted, where 1 wrong move meant the difference between a patient going home to their family or going to the morgue. Her colleagues called her brilliant, focused, unshakable. They didn't know that she'd spent the last 2 years carrying a secret that weighed more than any scalpel. They didn't know that she walked these halls knowing her birth parents lived just 15 miles away in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. They didn't know that she'd found them, researched them, watched from a distance as they lived their perfect, childless life. Marcus and Vivian Monroe. Pharmaceutical billionaires, philanthropists, power couple, married for 30 years, no children, every article said. The Monroes have focused their energy on building their empire and giving back to the community. Isla had read those words and felt something dark and bitter rise in her throat. No children, as if she had never existed. As if those 10 minutes she'd spent in her birth mother's arms had been erased from history like a mistake corrected in permanent ink. She was in the doctor's lounge, reviewing patient charts, when her pager went off. Trauma incoming, multiple vehicle collision, female, late 40s, critical internal bleeding. ETA 3 minutes. Isla moved on autopilot, scrubbing in, gowning up, her mind shifting into the focused calm that made her so good at her job. In the OR, there was no room for emotion. No space for anything except precision and speed and the singular goal of keeping someone alive. She was halfway to the operating room when she passed the emergency board and saw the name. Patient, Monroe Vivian, age 49, internal injuries, ruptured spleen, possible liver damage, critical condition. The world tilted sideways. Isla grabbed the wall, her vision tunneling, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. No, this couldn't be happening. Not like this. Not now. Dr. Isla. Dr. Chen appeared at her elbow, concern creasing his face. Are you all right? You look pale. She forced herself to breathe, to think, to function. The patient in OR3. What's her status? Critical. We need to move now if we're going to save her. I can take it if you're not feeling well. This was her out, her chance to walk away. To let someone else save the woman who hadn't saved her. But Isla heard herself say the words before she could stop them. I'll take it. I'm fine. Let's move. The operating room was controlled chaos, nurses prepping instruments, anesthesiologist monitoring vitals, blood pressure dropping, heart rate erratic. The patient on the table, unconscious, broken, bleeding out. Isla forced herself to look at the woman's face. 30 years older than the photographs she'd found, lines around the eyes, gray threading through dark hair. But still recognizable. Still the woman who had held her for 10 minutes and then let her go. Vivian Monroe, her birth mother, dying, scalpel. Isla's hand was steady as she made the first incision. Whatever chaos raged in her heart, her hands knew their job. Cut, clamp, suction, find the bleed, stop it, save the life. She worked for 3 hours, 3 hours of meticulous, exhausting, life-saving surgery, repairing the ruptured spleen, stopping the internal bleeding, stitching together the damage from the collision that should have killed Vivian Monroe but didn't, because Isla wouldn't let it. She stood over her birth mother's unconscious body and realized with startling clarity that she wasn't ready for this woman to die. Not yet. Not before Isla got answers. Not before she got to look her in the eye and ask why. Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't you fight for me? Why did you erase me from your perfect life? The surgery was successful. Vivian Monroe would live, and Isla would have to decide what to do with that fact. She was in the scrub room, washing her birth mother's blood from her hands, when Dr. Chen found her. That was incredible work in there, Isla. You saved her life. Another hour and she would have been gone. Isla watched the red-tinged water swirl down the drain. Just doing my job. Still. Her family will be grateful. I called the number on file. Her husband is on his way. Isla's hands stilled under the water. Marcus Monroe, the man who had convinced a 19-year-old girl to give up her baby, the man who had chosen his inheritance over his child, the man who was about to walk through those doors and come face to face with the daughter he'd thrown away. And he would have no idea who she was. When can I see her? Isla asked, her voice carefully neutral. She's in recovery now, should be conscious within the hour. You'll want to check on her anyway. Isla dried her hands slowly, methodically, buying herself time to think. She could request a different doctor take over post-op care. She could disappear from this situation before it got more complicated. She could protect herself from the pain of being in the same room as the woman who had abandoned her. But something stubborn and angry in her chest said no. She had saved this woman's life. She had earned the right to look her in the eye, to stand in front of her and know that Vivian Monroe owed her everything and didn't even know it. So Isla walked to the recovery room, pushed open the door, and saw her birth mother awake for the first time. Vivian Monroe looked small in the hospital bed, pale, fragile, nothing like the polished woman from the Society page photographs. Her eyes were unfocused from the anesthesia, but they tracked to Isla as she entered, and Isla felt the full weight of those eyes. Blue, not amber like her own, but searching, trying to focus, trying to understand. Doctor? Vivian's voice was hoarse from the breathing tube. Isla moved to the bedside, her professional mask firmly in place. Mrs. Monroe, I'm Dr. Reeves. I performed your surgery. You're very fortunate. Another hour and the internal bleeding would have been catastrophic, but you're going to make a full recovery. Vivian blinked slowly, processing the information. Thank you. Her eyes never left Isla's face. There's something about you. Something familiar. Isla's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't believe we've met. No, I suppose not. Vivian's gaze drifted to Isla's eyes. Amber. That's unusual. Beautiful. My mother's eyes. The words came out before Isla could stop them, or so I'm told. Vivian's expression flickered with something Isla couldn't read. Pain, longing, loss. You're very young to be a surgeon, 30. I'll be 31 next month. The date hung in the air between them. December 15th, the day Isla had been born, the day Vivian had given her away. but Vivian just nodded slowly. You must have worked very hard. I was motivated. Isla kept her voice steady. I always knew I wanted to help people, to save lives. Well, Vivian's voice cracked slightly. You certainly saved mine. A nurse entered with medication, breaking the moment. Isla stepped back, grateful for the interruption. Your husband should be arriving soon, Mrs. Monroe. The staff called him several times. Something dark crossed Vivian's face. I'm sure Marcus is very busy. He usually is. The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. Isla filed it away, another piece of the puzzle that was her birth parents' marriage. Nevertheless, you'll need support during recovery. Is there anyone else we should contact? Family? The question was calculated. Cruel, maybe. But Isla needed to hear it. Vivian's face crumpled for just a moment before she regained control. No family. It's just Marcus and me. The lie settled between them like a stone. No children? Isla pressed, knowing she was crossing a line but unable to stop herself. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. No children. It wasn't in the cards for us. And there it was. The erasure. The denial. 30 years of Isla's existence dismissed with one simple lie. Isla felt something crack open inside her chest, something that had been carefully locked away for 2 years. Since the day the private investigator had handed her the file with her birth parents' names and addresses and life stories, she opened her mouth, ready to say the words that would detonate this woman's carefully constructed reality. Mrs. Monroe. Vivian. I need to tell you something. But before she could continue, the door burst open, and Marcus Monroe strode in. Isla had seen photographs, had watched him from a distance at a charity gala 6 months ago, hiding in the crowd, studying the man who had given her life and then given her away. But nothing prepared her for the reality of him. Tall, commanding, expensive suit slightly rumpled, phone still pressed to his ear, the kind of man who took up all the oxygen in a room without even trying. I'll call you back, he said curtly into the phone, then turned to Vivian with a practiced expression of concern. Darling, I came as soon as I could. The board meeting ran long, and then there was traffic. He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes landed on Isla, and she watched recognition dawn in his face, not of her specifically, but of something in her features that he couldn't place but couldn't ignore. The amber eyes, the shape of her face, the ghost of his own features reflected back at him. This is Dr. Reeves. Vivian's voice was weak but steady. She performed my surgery. She saved my life. Dr. Reeves. Marcus extended his hand automatically, but his eyes never left her face. Marcus Monroe. Thank you for taking care of my wife. Isla shook his hand briefly, the first time she had ever touched her biological father. His palm was warm, firm. The handshake of a man used to making deals and closing contracts. Just doing my job, Mr. Monroe. Those eyes, Marcus said suddenly, his voice strange. They're very distinctive, unusual color. Isla met his gaze steadily. My mother's eyes, or so I'm told. The words carried a weight only she understood, a double meaning that hung in the air like smoke. Marcus frowned slightly, as if trying to solve a puzzle he didn't know existed. Have we met before? You seem familiar. I don't believe so. Isla kept her voice professional. Cool. Giving nothing away, I would remember. She turned back to Vivian, deliberately breaking the moment. You need rest, Mrs. Monroe. I'll check on you in a few hours. If you need anything, the nurses know how to reach me. She left the room quickly, her hands trembling, her breath coming in short gasps. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. What was she doing? This was a mistake, a terrible, complicated mistake. She should request a different doctor, should distance herself from this situation before it exploded in her face. But even as she thought it, she knew she wouldn't. Because for 30 years, she had wondered about these people, had built them up in her mind as monsters or saints or something in between, had imagined 1,000 different versions of who they were and why they had given her away. And now they were here. Real, flawed, human, and Isla needed to know the truth. Dr. Reeves, a young nurse approached her. Mrs. Monroe is asking for you again. She seems agitated. Isla pushed off the wall, straightening her spine, pulling her professional mask back into place. I'll be right there. She found Vivian sitting up in bed, Marcus standing by the window on his phone, his back to his wife. Vivian's eyes locked onto Isla the moment she entered. Dr. Reeves, I need to ask you something. Of course. Are you in pain? I can adjust your medication. No, it's not that. Vivian's voice was urgent, searching. This might sound strange, but have we met before? There's something about you that feels familiar. Like I should know you. Isla's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The moment. She could tell the truth right now, could watch this woman's world crumble, could finally get the answer she'd been seeking for 30 years. But Marcus was in the room, and something in Isla resisted giving him that moment, that revelation. He didn't deserve to be part of this. I don't believe so, Mrs. Monroe. Isla kept her voice gentle. I would remember. Please, call me Vivian. Mrs. Monroe makes me feel ancient. Vivian smiled weakly. And you saved my life. I think that earns you first-name privileges. Vivian, then. The name felt strange on Isla's tongue, intimate, dangerous. How old are you, Dr. Reeves, if you don't mind my asking? 30. I'll be 31 next month, December 15th. She watched Vivian's face carefully, watched the color drain from her cheeks, watched her hands grip the bedsheets. December 15th, Vivian repeated softly. That's a good birthday. Is it? Vivian's eyes filled with tears. I had a daughter once. She would have been 31 this December 15th. The confession hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Marcus turned from the window, his phone forgotten. Vivian. His voice was sharp, warning, but Vivian ignored him, her eyes locked on Isla. We gave her up for adoption, 30 years ago. I was 19, stupid, scared, and I let them convince me that I couldn't do it, that she deserved better than 2 broke college kids. Her voice broke. I held her for 10 minutes. I counted her fingers and toes. I looked into her eyes, amber eyes, just like yours. And then they took her away, and I never saw her again. Tears streamed down Vivian's face. Every year on December 15th, I wonder where she is, what she's doing, if she's happy, if she ever thinks about me, if she hates me for giving her away. Vivian. Marcus moved toward the bed, his face pale. You need to rest. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in 30 years. Vivian's voice was steel beneath the tears. I gave away my daughter for you, Marcus, for your father's approval, for your inheritance, for this life we built on the bones of the family we could have had. She looked back at Isla, and there was something desperate in her eyes. Do you have children, Dr. Reeves? Isla's throat was tight. No, not yet. Don't wait. Vivian gripped Isla's hand suddenly, urgently. Don't let anyone convince you that anything is more important than the people you love. Not money, not legacy, not fear. Because I've spent 30 years with everything I thought I wanted, and I would trade it all for 10 more minutes with my daughter. The words hit Isla like a physical blow. This was not what she had expected. Not the cold, calculating woman who had chosen wealth over her child, not the monster she had built in her mind. This was a woman drowning in 30 years of regret. Isla pulled her hand away gently. I need to check your vitals. She moved through the examination mechanically. Blood pressure, heart rate, checking the surgical site, all the while feeling Vivian's eyes on her face. When she finished, she stepped back. Everything looks good. You should rest now. Dr. Reeves, Vivian's voice stopped her at the door. Thank you for saving my life, for listening, for not judging. Isla turned back, and for the first time, let a crack show in her professional mask. Everyone makes choices they regret, Vivian. The question is what we do with those regrets, whether we let them destroy us or whether we find a way to make peace with them. She left before Vivian could respond. In the hallway, Isla leaned against the wall and let herself feel the full weight of what had just happened. Vivian had told her the truth, had confessed the secret she and Marcus had kept for 30 years, had revealed the daughter they'd erased from their public life, and she had done it with tears and regret and a raw honesty that Isla hadn't expected. It would be easier if Vivian were a monster, if she were cold and unfeeling and indifferent to the child she'd given away. Then Isla could hate her cleanly, could walk away from this situation with her anger intact. But Vivian wasn't a monster. She was just a woman who had made a terrible choice at 19 and had spent 30 years living with the consequences, and that made everything so much more complicated. Isla's pager went off. Another emergency, another life to save. She pushed off the wall and headed toward the ER, grateful for the distraction, but she knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Over the next 2 days, Isla found herself drawn back to Vivian's room more often than strictly necessary. She told herself it was just good patient care, monitoring recovery, checking for complications. But the truth was more complicated. She wanted to understand this woman, wanted to reconcile the mother who had given her away with the mother who cried over her loss 30 years later. Vivian seemed to sense something too. She lit up whenever Isla entered the room, asked questions, wanted to know about Isla's life, her career, her family. "Tell me about your parents," Vivian said on the second day. "The ones who raised you?" Isla hesitated, then decided honesty was the only path forward. "They're wonderful. My mom, Susan, is a teacher. My dad, David, is an engineer. They adopted me when I was 3 days old, gave me everything, love, support, every opportunity. They sound amazing." Vivian's voice was wistful. "They are." Isla paused. "They told me I was adopted when I was 7, made sure I always knew I was chosen, wanted, loved. That's beautiful." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "I'm glad. I'm so glad you had that." "But," Isla prompted gently. But there was always a question. Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. Wasn't there? Always a wondering about where you came from, who you looked like, why they gave you away. Isla's breath caught. "How did you know?" "Because I've spent 30 years wondering the same things about my daughter." Vivian met her eyes, wondering if she was happy, if she felt loved, if she ever thought about me, if she hated me. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truth. Isla opened her mouth, ready to say the words, ready to end this dance. But Marcus walked in, and the moment shattered. He'd been there every evening, staying for exactly 1 hour before leaving for dinner meetings or conference calls or whatever else filled his carefully scheduled life. He was polite to Isla, distant, but she caught him watching her sometimes with that same puzzled expression, as if he were trying to solve a riddle he didn't know existed. On the 3rd day, Isla made a decision. She waited until Marcus left for his evening meeting. Then she returned to Vivian's room and closed the door behind her. Vivian looked up from the book she was reading, surprise and pleasure crossing her face. "Dr. Reeves. I didn't expect to see you again today." Isla moved to the bedside, her heart hammering. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you 3 days ago." Vivian set down her book, concern creasing her face. "What is it? Is something wrong with my recovery?" "No, your recovery is perfect. This is about something else." Isla took a deep breath. "You asked me if we'd met before, if there was something familiar about me?" "Yes." Vivian's voice was cautious. "I did. We haven't met. But you're right that there's a connection between us." Isla pulled up a chair and sat down, meeting Vivian's eyes directly. "I was adopted as an infant. Private adoption, very little information provided. For most of my life, I didn't know anything about my birth parents, except that they were young college students who couldn't take care of a baby." Vivian had gone very still. "But 2 years ago I hired a private investigator. I needed to know where I came from, who I looked like, why they gave me away." Isla's voice was steady, but her hands trembled in her lap. "The investigator found them, my birth parents, found out their names, where they lived, what they'd done with their lives after giving me away." Vivian's face had drained of all color. "Isla." "Yes," Isla's voice broke. "My name is Isla, the name you gave me in the hospital before they took me away. The name my adoptive parents kept because it was written on the paperwork." "Oh my God." Vivian's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, I've known who you were since the moment I saw your name on the emergency board 3 days ago. I've known, and I saved your life anyway." And I've been standing in this room listening to you talk about the daughter you gave away, and that daughter is me." Tears streamed down both their faces now. "You're my daughter." Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. "You're my Isla. I'm your Isla." Vivian reached out with trembling hands, and Isla took them, and for the first time in 30 years, mother and daughter held each other. "I'm so sorry," Vivian sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I should have fought for you. I should have told Marcus's father to go to hell. I should have kept you." "You were 19. Isla's voice was thick with tears. "You were scared. I understand that now, but I thought about you every day, every single day for 30 years. I wondered if you were happy, if you were loved, if you ever thought about me." "I did," Isla admitted. "I thought about you all the time. Wondered why you didn't want me. Why I wasn't enough. You were enough." Vivian gripped her hands tighter. "You were always enough. It was me who wasn't enough, me who was too weak to fight for you." They held each other and cried, 30 years of grief and loss and longing pouring out in that sterile hospital room. Finally, Vivian pulled back, studying Isla's face with wonder. "You're so beautiful, so accomplished. A surgeon. You save lives. I had good parents," Isla said softly. "Susan and David gave me everything. I'm grateful to them." Vivian's voice was fierce. "I'm so grateful they loved you the way I couldn't." "They did love me. They do love me." Isla paused, but there was always a hole, always a question, and now I have answers, but I don't know what to do with them. "What do you want to do with them?" Vivian asked gently. Isla laughed, a broken sound. "I don't know. I've spent 2 years being angry at you, at Marcus, at the choice you made. I've imagined confronting you 1,000 times, but I never imagined this, never imagined that you'd be full of regret, that you'd have spent 30 years mourning me. I have, every day, every December 15th, every time I see a little girl with amber eyes." Vivian's voice broke. "I've mourned you, and I've hated myself for giving you away. Does Marcus know that you feel this way?" Vivian's expression hardened. "Marcus has spent 30 years pretending it never happened, burying himself in work, building his empire. He never talks about you, never acknowledges that we had a daughter. It's like he's erased you from his memory." "But he hasn't," Isla said quietly. "I see it in his eyes when he looks at me. He recognizes something. He just doesn't know what." "Are you going to tell him?" Vivian asked. "That you're our daughter?" Isla was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Part of me wants to watch his perfect world crumble, wants him to know that the daughter he threw away grew up to save his wife's life. And the other part is tired of being angry, tired of carrying this weight." Isla met Vivian's eyes. "I just want to understand. I want to know why. And I want to figure out if there's any way forward from here. I want that too," Vivian said softly. "I want to know you, Isla. I want to hear about your life. I want to be part of it if you'll let me. I know I have no right to ask. I know I gave up that right 30 years ago, but I'm asking anyway." Isla felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been locked tight for 2 years beginning to loosen. "I'm not ready to call you Mom. I have a mom. Susan raised me. She's my mother in every way that matters. I understand." Vivian's voice was thick with tears. "I would never try to replace her. But maybe." Isla continued slowly. "Maybe we could start with coffee, with conversations, with getting to know each other. I would like that." Vivian smiled through her tears. "I would like that very much." They sat together in comfortable silence, hands still clasped, the weight of 30 years beginning to lift. Then the door opened, and Marcus walked in. He stopped short, taking in the scene. Isla and Vivian holding hands, both of them crying, something intimate and profound happening that he wasn't part of. "What's going on?" His voice was sharp, confused, afraid. Vivian looked at Isla, a question in her eyes. Isla took a deep breath. This was it. The moment of truth. She could stay silent, could protect Marcus from the consequences of his choice, could let him continue living in his carefully constructed reality, or she could detonate it all. She stood, facing the man who had given her life and then given her away. "Mr. Monroe, I'd like you to meet your daughter." The one you convinced Vivian to give up for adoption 30 years ago. The one whose existence you've spent 3 decades pretending to forget. The color drained from Marcus's face. That's not possible. His voice was barely a whisper. The adoption was closed. Anonymous. I found you. Isla's voice was steady, cold. 2 years ago, I hired a private investigator. I've known who you were, where you were, what you'd become. And I've hated you for it. Marcus sank into a chair, looking suddenly old. Vivian. He looked at his wife, betrayal in his eyes. You knew? I just found out. An hour ago. Vivian's voice was steel. And unlike you, Marcus, I'm not going to pretend this isn't happening. I'm not going to bury it under work and meetings and denial. She turned to Isla, and there was fierce protectiveness in her eyes. This is Isla, our daughter. The daughter you threw away so you could have your father's approval and your precious company. Marcus looked at Isla, really looked at her, and she watched the recognition finally click into place. The amber eyes, the shape of her face, the ghost of his own features reflected back at him. Oh God, his voice broke. Oh God, it's really you. It's really me. Isla's voice was hard. The daughter you gave away. The mistake you erased. The inconvenience you eliminated so you could inherit your empire. I was 21, Marcus said weakly. I was terrified. My father said he'd disown me, cut me off completely. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought you'd have a better life. Did you? Isla's voice cut like a scalpel. Did you really think that? Or did you just choose money and power over your own child? Marcus flinched as if she'd struck him. Both. His voice was raw, honest. I told myself it was for you, that you deserved better than 2 broke college kids. But the truth is, I was protecting myself, protecting my inheritance, my future, my comfort. He looked up at her, and for the first time, Isla saw genuine anguish in his face. I was a coward. I am a coward, and I have thought about you every single day for 30 years. But you did nothing. Isla's voice was cold. You had all the money in the world, all the resources. You could have found me, could have reached out, could have tried to be part of my life. But you did nothing. Because I didn't deserve to. Marcus's voice broke. I gave up that right when I signed those adoption papers, when I chose my father's approval over my own child. He stood, moving closer, but not touching. I don't expect forgiveness, Isla. I don't deserve it. But please know that not a day has gone by that I haven't wondered about you. Wondered what you looked like, what you were doing, if you were happy, if you ever thought about us. I did think about you, Isla said, her voice thick with emotion. I thought about you all the time, wondered why I wasn't enough, why you didn't want me, why you chose everything else over me. You were enough. Marcus's voice was fierce. You were always enough. It was me who wasn't enough, me who was too weak, too selfish, too afraid. The raw honesty in his voice surprised Isla. She'd expected excuses, justifications, the polished corporate speak of a CEO used to spinning narratives, not this broken admission of guilt. What do you want from me? She asked, looking between them. Why tell me all this now? I don't want anything, Vivian said softly. Except maybe the chance to know you, to hear about your life, to tell you that I'm proud of you, even though I have no right to be. And I want to make amends, Marcus added, however I can, whatever that looks like. I know I can't undo the past, can't give you back the 30 years we lost, but maybe I can do something good, something that matters. You can't buy your way out of this, Mr. Monroe. Isla's voice was sharp. I don't need your money. I don't want your guilt offerings. I know, Marcus said quietly. But maybe I can use my resources to help other people, other children in situations like yours, other families torn apart by impossible choices. He met her eyes directly. Let me create something in your name, a foundation, resources for adopted children, support for birth parents, counseling, education. Let me take the money I chose over you and use it to make sure other families don't have to make the same choice. Isla stared at him, searching for manipulation, for the angle, for the corporate strategy. but all she saw was a broken man trying to find redemption. "I need time," she said finally. "Time to process this, time to figure out what I want, time to decide if I can ever forgive either of you." "Take all the time you need," Vivian said softly. "We'll be here, however long it takes." Isla nodded and turned to leave. At the door, she paused and looked back. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I had a good life. My parents, Susan and David, they loved me. They gave me everything. They made me who I am. So whatever guilt you're carrying, whatever regrets you have, know that I was loved. I was wanted. I was enough." Tears streamed down both Vivian's and Marcus's faces. "I'm glad," Vivian whispered. "I'm so glad you were loved." Isla left the room and didn't look back. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back for 3 days. The anger, the grief, the confusion, the strange, unexpected compassion for two people who had made a terrible choice and had spent 30 years living with the consequences. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mom, Susan. "Dinner this weekend? Dad wants to try his new grill. We miss you." Isla smiled through her tears and typed back, "I'll be there. I love you both." Because whatever complicated feelings she had about Vivian and Marcus, one thing was crystal clear. Susan and David were her parents. They had raised her, loved her, made her who she was, and nothing would ever change that. But maybe, just maybe, there was room in her life for more than one kind of family. Maybe broken things could be rebuilt. Maybe forgiveness was possible. Maybe second chances were real. She just needed time to figure out what that looked like. Isla pushed off the wall and headed home, exhausted and emotionally wrung out, but somehow lighter than she'd felt in 2 years. The secret was out. The truth was spoken. The lies were shattered. And whatever came next, at least it would be real. Isla didn't go back to Vivian's room for the rest of her hospital stay. She assigned Dr. Chen to handle the post-op care and threw herself into other cases, other surgeries, other lives that didn't come with 30 years of baggage attached. But she couldn't stop thinking about them, about Vivian's tears and raw regret, about Marcus's broken confession, about the way they had both looked at her with a mixture of wonder and grief and desperate hope. She told her parents everything over dinner that weekend. Susan and David listened without interruption as Isla recounted the entire story, the emergency surgery, the revelation, the confrontation, all of it. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then Susan reached across the table and took Isla's hand. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Isla laughed a broken sound. "I have no idea, Mom. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm confused. I'm relieved. I'm all of it at once, and I don't know what to do with any of it." David leaned forward, his engineer's mind already working through the problem. "What do you want to do with it?" "Not what you think you should do, not what anyone else wants. What do you want?" Isla was quiet for a long moment. "I want to understand. I want to know them. Not as the monsters I built in my head, but as real people. Flawed people who made a terrible choice and have lived with it ever since." She looked at her parents, fear in her eyes. "Does that make me disloyal to you? Does it hurt you that I want to know them?" Susan's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, honey, no, never. We always knew this day might come. We always knew you might want to find your birth parents, and we've never felt threatened by that." "You're our daughter," David added firmly. "Nothing will ever change that. Not biology, not other relationships, nothing. You're ours, and we're yours, and that's forever. But that doesn't mean you can't have a relationship with Vivian and Marcus, too," Susan continued. "Love doesn't divide, Isla. It multiplies. You having them in your life doesn't mean you have less room for us." Isla felt something tight in her chest loosen. "I love you both so much." "We love you too, sweetheart." Susan squeezed her hand. "So what's your next step?" Isla took a deep breath. "I think I want to have coffee with Vivian. Just the two of us. Start small. See if we can build something from the wreckage." "And Marcus?" David asked. Isla's expression hardened slightly. "Marcus is more complicated. What he did, convincing Vivian to give me up, choosing his inheritance over his child, that's harder to forgive." You don't have to forgive him, Susan said gently. Not now, not ever, if you don't want to. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone. It's something you give when and if you're ready. I know, Isla said softly. But I think I want to try. Not for him, for me. Because I'm tired of carrying this anger. It's exhausting. Then try, David said simply. Take it slow, set boundaries, and know that we're here for you no matter what. Isla felt tears prick her eyes. How did I get so lucky to have you two as parents? We're the lucky ones, Susan said, pulling her into a hug. We got you. They spent the rest of the evening talking and laughing and being the family they'd always been, and Isla felt grounded in a way she hadn't in days. Whatever happened with Vivian and Marcus, she had this. She had Susan and David. She had home, and that was enough. The next day, Isla sent Vivian a text. She'd gotten the number from the hospital records, which was probably a HIPAA violation, but she figured saving someone's life earned you a few rule-bending privileges. It's Isla. Would you like to have coffee sometime this week? The response came within minutes. Yes. Please. Anytime. Anywhere. Thank you for reaching out. They met at a small cafe near the hospital on Thursday afternoon. Isla arrived first, ordering a latte and claiming a corner table where they could talk privately. Vivian arrived exactly on time, looking nervous and hopeful, and nothing like the polished socialite from the photographs. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, no makeup, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger, more vulnerable. She spotted Isla and smiled, a tremulous, uncertain thing. Hi? Hi. Isla gestured to the chair across from her. I ordered you a cappuccino. I hope that's okay. It's perfect. Vivian sat down, wrapping her hands around the cup as if she needed something to hold on to. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either, Isla admitted. But I meant what I said in the hospital. I want to understand. I want to know you. What do you want to know? Vivian asked softly. Everything. Isla leaned forward. I want to know who you were before you got pregnant. What you wanted to be, what you dreamed about. I want to know what happened after you gave me away, how you coped, how you survived. Vivian took a shaky breath. I was a literature major at Columbia. I wanted to be a writer. I loved stories, loved the way words could build worlds and capture emotions and make people feel less alone. She smiled sadly. I met Marcus in a philosophy class sophomore year. He was brilliant, intense, ambitious. We fell in love fast and hard the way you do when you're young, and everything feels like the most important thing in the world. What happened when you found out you were pregnant? Vivian's expression darkened. I was terrified, but also excited. I know that sounds strange, but I wanted you. From the moment I saw those 2 lines on the test, I wanted you. She paused, gathering herself. Marcus was different. He panicked, started talking about his father, about the company, about how we couldn't do this now, how it would ruin everything. And his father? Isla prompted. Richard Monroe was a force of nature. Vivian's voice was bitter, cold, calculating, ruthless. He built his pharmaceutical empire through sheer will and an absolute refusal to accept anything less than perfection. She met Isla's eyes. When he found out I was pregnant, he gave us an ultimatum. Terminate the pregnancy or give the baby up for adoption. If we refused, Marcus would be cut off completely. No inheritance, no position in the company, no future. What did you want to do? Isla asked quietly. I wanted to keep you. Vivian's voice broke. I wanted to tell Richard Monroe to go to hell. I wanted to leave with Marcus and start over somewhere else. Just the 3 of us. But Marcus didn't want that. Marcus was terrified of his father, terrified of losing everything he'd been raised to inherit, and he convinced me that we were too young, that we couldn't give you the life you deserved. That adoption was the kindest thing we could do. Vivian wiped tears from her cheeks. I was 19 and scared, and I let him convince me. I let him talk me into giving away the most precious thing I'd ever had, and I have regretted it every single day since. Tell me about the day I was born, Isla said softly. Vivian closed her eyes, and when she spoke, her voice was distant. Remembering. The labor was 36 hours, long and agonizing. I was alone most of it. Marcus came for the last few hours, but he couldn't look at me, couldn't handle seeing what his choice was costing. She opened her eyes and they were full of tears. And then you were born, and they placed you in my arms, and you were perfect. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, a little rosebud mouth, and those eyes, those extraordinary amber eyes that looked right into my soul. What did you do? I counted your fingers and toes. I memorized every inch of your face. I told you I loved you. I told you I was sorry. I named you Isla because it means island, and I wanted you to be strong and beautiful and complete unto yourself. She sobbed openly now, and then the social worker came and took you away, and my arms have been empty ever since. Isla felt her own tears falling. I'm sorry, Vivian whispered. I'm so sorry I wasn't strong enough to fight for you. I'm sorry I let Marcus and his father convince me. I'm sorry I gave you away. Did you try to find me? Isla asked. After? Vivian nodded. 5 years later, after Marcus and I were married, after his father had secured his position in the company. I hired a private investigator. I needed to know if you were okay, if you were happy, if you were loved. What happened? Marcus found out, shut it down, said it would be cruel to disrupt your life, that you probably didn't even know you were adopted, that we needed to let you go. She laughed bitterly. And I let him convince me. Again, I let him talk me out of finding you, out of knowing you, because I was weak and guilty, and I thought maybe he was right. Maybe you were better off without us. Were you happy? Isla asked suddenly. In your marriage? In the life you built after giving me away? Vivian was quiet for a long moment. No, I wasn't happy. I went through the motions, played the role of the perfect CEO's wife, attended galas and charity events and board meetings, smiled for cameras, pretended everything was fine. But inside, I was hollow. Every December 15th, I would lock myself in my room and cry. Every time I saw a little girl with dark hair or amber eyes, my heart would break all over again. Every time someone asked why we didn't have children, I had to lie and pretend it was a choice instead of a wound that never healed. Why did you stay? Isla asked. Why stay married to Marcus if you were so unhappy? Because I thought it was what I deserved, Vivian said simply. Punishment for giving you up. I thought if I left Marcus, if I tried to be happy, it would be a betrayal of you, of the sacrifice I'd made. She looked at Isla directly, but seeing you now. Seeing the extraordinary woman you've become. I realize I've been punishing myself for Marcus's cowardice, and I'm done. I filed for divorce 2 days ago. Isla's eyes widened. You did? I did. Vivian's voice was firm. I've wasted 30 years in a marriage built on guilt and regret. I'm not wasting any more time. Life is too short, and I want to spend whatever time I have left trying to know you, trying to build something real. What does Marcus think about that? Marcus is devastated, but he understands. He knows he destroyed our marriage the day he convinced me to give you away. Everything after that was just pretending. Vivian reached across the table and took Isla's hand. I know I have no right to ask this. I know I gave up the privilege of being your mother 30 years ago, but I'm asking anyway. Can we try? Can we build something? Not mother and daughter necessarily, but something. A relationship. A connection. Isla looked at this woman who had given her life and then given her away. This woman who had spent 30 years drowning in regret. This woman who was finally choosing herself. And she made a decision. Yes, we can try, but I need you to understand something. Anything, Vivian said. Susan is my mom. She raised me. She loved me. She made me who I am. I will never call you Mom. That name belongs to her. I understand, Vivian said quickly. I would never ask you to, but maybe I can call you Vivian. Maybe we can have coffee. Maybe we can get to know each other. Maybe we can build something new from the broken pieces. I would like that. Vivian smiled through her tears. I would like that so much. They talked for 2 more hours. about Isla's childhood, about medical school, about Susan and David and the life they'd built together, about Vivian's abandoned dreams of writing, about the memoir she was thinking of starting. When they finally left the cafe, Vivian pulled Isla into a hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me a chance I don't deserve. Everyone deserves a second chance," Isla said softly, "even people who make terrible mistakes." She pulled back and looked at Vivian seriously. "But this is going to take time. I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and suddenly be okay with everything. There's going to be anger and hurt and complicated feelings. You need to be prepared for that." "I am," Vivian said firmly. "I'll take whatever you're willing to give, however long it takes." Isla nodded and walked away. Feeling lighter than she had in years, it wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Marcus was harder. He called Isla 3 times before she finally answered. Each voicemail was the same, apologetic, desperate, begging for a chance to talk. Finally, she agreed to meet him for coffee, the same cafe, the same corner table. But this time, the energy was different. Marcus arrived looking haggard, older than his 51 years, the polished CEO veneer cracked and crumbling. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," he said, sitting down across from her. "I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either," Isla said coolly. "But Vivian said you wanted to talk about the foundation, so I'm here to listen." Marcus flinched at her tone but nodded. "I meant what I said in the hospital. I want to create something in your name. A foundation to support adopted children and their families, resources, counseling, education, financial assistance for families who want to keep their children but can't afford to." He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "I've already started the paperwork. The Isla Reeves Foundation for Adopted Children. I'm prepared to donate $50 million to start. More is needed." Isla stared at the folder without touching it. "You think you can buy your way out of this?" "No," Marcus said quietly. "I know I can't. Nothing I do will ever make up for what I did, for the choice I made, for the 30 years you grew up without us." He met her eyes and she saw genuine anguish there. "But I have resources, money, influence, and I want to use them to make sure other families don't have to make the choice we did. That other children don't grow up wondering why they weren't enough." "Why now?" Isla asked. "You've had 30 years to do something like this. Why wait until I showed up?" "Because I'm a coward," Marcus said simply. "I spent 30 years burying my guilt under work and success and pretending you didn't exist, pretending I hadn't given away my own child, pretending I was a good man who'd made a hard choice instead of a selfish boy who'd chosen money over family." He leaned forward, his voice raw. "But I can't pretend anymore. Not now that I've met you. Not now that I've seen what an extraordinary person you are. Not now that I know exactly what I gave away." Isla was quiet for a long moment. "I had coffee with Vivian yesterday. I know, she told me." Marcus smiled sadly. "She said it went well. That you're willing to try to build a relationship with her. Are you jealous?" "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "Terrified that you'll forgive her and not me, that you'll see her as the victim and me as the villain. And maybe that's fair. Maybe that's what I deserve." "Is that what you think?" Isla asked. "That Vivian was the victim?" "I think we were both victims of my father's tyranny and my own cowardice," Marcus said carefully. "But I was the one who convinced Vivian to give you up. I was the one who chose my inheritance over my child. So yes, I'm the villain in this story." Isla studied him. This man who had given her life and then given her away. This man who was finally taking responsibility for his choices. "I'm not ready to forgive you," she said finally. "What you did? Convincing a 19-year-old girl to give up her baby so you could keep your trust fund. That's not something I can just get over." Marcus nodded, pain etched in his face. "I understand, but," Isla continued, "I'm willing to consider the foundation, not because it absolves you, it doesn't, but because it could help people, it could make a difference, and maybe that's worth something." Marcus's face lit up with hope. Thank you. Thank you, Isla." "I have conditions," Isla said firmly. I want full oversight. I want to approve every program, every initiative, every dollar spent. This is my name on the building, my reputation, and I won't let you use it as a PR stunt to rehabilitate your image." "Agreed," Marcus said immediately. "Whatever you want, whatever you need. This is your foundation. I'm just providing the resources." "And I want you to volunteer," Isla continued. "Not just write checks, actually show up, work with the kids, the families. I want you to see firsthand what adoption looks like, what it costs, what it gives. I will," Marcus promised. "Whatever it takes." Isla picked up the folder and flipped through it. The paperwork was thorough, professional, already in motion. "You were pretty confident I'd say yes." "I was hopeful," Marcus said quietly. "Hope is all I have left." Isla closed the folder and looked at him directly. "I'm doing this for the kids who need help, for the families who are struggling, for the birth parents drowning in guilt and the adoptive parents trying to do right by children who aren't biologically theirs. I'm not doing this for you. I know," Marcus said, "and that's exactly why it matters." They talked for another hour about logistics, about programs and initiatives in the building Marcus had already purchased in downtown Manhattan, about staffing and budgets and timelines. And slowly, grudgingly, Isla began to see glimpses of the man Marcus might have been if he hadn't been crushed under his father's expectations, the man he was trying to become now that those expectations were gone. It didn't erase what he'd done, didn't make up for 30 years of absence. But it was something. As they were leaving, Marcus stopped her. "Isla, can I ask you something?" She turned back wary. "What? Are you happy? Did you have a good life? Were you loved?" Isla softened slightly. "Yes, I was loved. My parents, Susan and David, they gave me everything. They made me feel wanted and chosen and enough. So whatever guilt you're carrying, know that I had a good childhood. A good life." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "I'm glad. I'm so glad you were loved. But that doesn't absolve you," Isla said firmly. "You still made the choice you made. You still gave me away. The fact that it worked out doesn't make it right." "I know," Marcus whispered. "I know." Isla walked away, leaving him standing alone in front of the cafe. She wasn't ready to forgive him, wasn't ready to call him Dad, wasn't ready for anything more than this tentative conditional partnership. But maybe someday she would be. Time would tell. The Ela Reeves Foundation for Adopted Children opened its doors 6 months later on a crisp October morning. The building was beautiful, modern, welcoming, with bright colors and comfortable spaces and an entire wall dedicated to photographs of adopted children with their families, smiling, whole, loved. Isla stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, flanked by Susan and David on one side and Vivian on the other. Marcus stood slightly apart, respecting the boundaries Isla had established, but present nonetheless. The press was there, cameras flashing, reporters asking questions. The story of the foundation had captured public attention. Billionaire CEO creates foundation named after the daughter he gave up for adoption. It was the kind of redemption narrative people loved, but Isla knew the truth was more complicated. She stepped up to the microphone, her heart pounding, and began to speak. "Thank you all for being here today. This foundation exists because of a complicated truth. Adoption is born from loss, the loss of birth parents, the loss of biological connection, the loss of knowing where you come from." She paused, gathering herself. But adoption can also be born from love, the love of adoptive parents who choose you, who raise you, who make you who you are. She looked at Susan and David, her eyes shining. "Mom, Dad, you gave me everything. You made me who I am. You taught me that family isn't about biology. It's about showing up. Day after day, year after year, you showed up for me. And I love you more than words can express." Susan and David were crying openly. Isla turned to Vivian, "And to my birth mother, who made an impossible choice at 19 and has lived with the consequences ever since. I'm learning to understand. I'm learning that people are complicated, that mistakes don't define us. That regret can be transformed into action." She looked at Marcus. "This foundation exists because of choices, bad choices that hurt people, good choices that heal them, and the choice to take our pain and turn it into something that helps others." Her voice grew stronger. The Ela Reeves Foundation will provide resources for adopted children and their families, counseling for birth parents struggling with their decision, financial assistance for families who want to keep their children but can't afford to, education about adoption for everyone involved in the process. She smiled. Because I believe that every child deserves to be loved, every parent deserves support, and every family, no matter how it's formed, deserves a chance. The crowd erupted in applause. After the ceremony, Isla found herself surrounded by people. Adoptive parents thanking her, birth mothers crying and sharing their stories, adopted children asking questions. She answered them all with patience and grace, feeling the weight of what they'd created. This was real. This was going to help people. This was going to make a difference. Vivian found her during a quiet moment, pulling her aside. "I'm so proud of you," she said softly. "I know I have no right to be, but I am." "Thank you," Isla said, "for being here, for supporting this, always." Vivian squeezed her hand. "I'll always support you, whatever you need." They stood together, watching the celebration unfold around them. "I'm writing again," Vivian said suddenly. "The memoir I mentioned, about adoption and loss and second chances. That's wonderful." Isla smiled. "When can I read it?" "When it's done." Vivian laughed. "I'm a slow writer." "But it's helping. Getting it all out, processing everything. I'm glad." Vivian hesitated, then pulled a small box from her purse. "I have something for you. I've been carrying it for 30 years, waiting for a day I wasn't sure would ever come." Isla opened the box to find a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny book with Isla engraved on the cover. "I bought it the day after you were born." Vivian's voice was thick with emotion. "Before they took you away. I wanted you to have something from me, something that said I'd thought about you, that I'd named you, that you were real and loved and wanted." "Why didn't you give it to the adoption agency?" Isla asked, her own voice breaking. "Because I was selfish," Vivian admitted. "I wanted to keep something of you with me. But now I want you to have it. To know that even when I couldn't be your mother, I was thinking of you." Isla fastened the bracelet around her wrist, feeling the weight of 30 years of love and loss and longing. "Thank you," she whispered, "for this, for everything." Vivian pulled her into a hug, and Isla let herself be held by the woman who had given her life twice, once at birth and once on an operating table when fate had brought them back together. Marcus approached them carefully, respectfully, waiting to be acknowledged. Isla pulled back from Vivian and turned to him. "The foundation is incredible," she said. "You did good work here. We did good work," Marcus corrected gently. "This is yours, Isla. I just provided the resources." Still, Isla allowed, "Thank you." Marcus looked like he wanted to say more, to bridge the gap that still existed between them. But he just nodded. "I'm going to volunteer. Like you asked, starting next week, working with the kids." "Good," Isla said. "They need people who understand what it's like to make hard choices, who can be honest about mistakes." "I can do that," Marcus said quietly. "I'm learning how." Isla studied him. This man who was trying so hard to make amends, who showed up every week at the foundation, who had quietly donated to adoption agencies across the country, who was doing the work. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it was something. "Maybe someday," she said softly. "Maybe someday I'll be ready to call you Dad. But not yet." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "I'll wait, however long it takes. I'll wait." Isla nodded and walked away, feeling the bracelet on her wrist, a tangible reminder that broken things could be rebuilt. That second chances were real. That forgiveness was possible, even if it took time. Over the next year, Isla built a life that included all her families. Sunday dinners with Susan and David, coffee dates with Vivian, occasional lunches with Marcus where they talked about the foundation, and slowly, carefully began to know each other. It wasn't perfect. There were hard days. Days when the anger resurfaced, days when Isla looked at Marcus and felt the full weight of his abandonment, days when she wondered if she was betraying Susan by building a relationship with Vivian. But Susan and David were endlessly supportive. "Love doesn't divide, sweetheart," Susan reminded her over and over. It multiplies. You having Vivian in your life doesn't mean you have less room for me. And slowly, Isla began to believe it. Vivian finished her memoir, and it became a bestseller. A raw, honest account of giving up a child and spending 30 years living with that choice. It helped thousands of birth mothers feel less alone, less ashamed, less broken. Marcus threw himself into the foundation work, not just writing checks, but actually showing up, working with kids, listening to their stories, being honest about his own failures. And Isla watched him transform from the polished CEO who had everything to the humbled man who had lost what mattered most and was trying to earn it back. 2 years after the foundation opened, Isla found herself in the surgical observation gallery with Marcus. They'd fallen into a routine of meeting there once a month, watching surgeries together, talking about medicine and life and slowly building something that resembled a relationship. "She's good," Marcus observed, watching Isla's protégé perform a complex procedure. "You've trained her well." "She's brilliant," Isla corrected. "I just gave her the tools." They watched in comfortable silence, a peace between them that had been hard-won through countless difficult conversations, and Marcus's consistent, patient presence. "I'm proud of you," Marcus said quietly. "I know I have no right to be, but I am. You've built something extraordinary, your career, the foundation, the lives you've changed. We built it," Isla said, and she meant it. "The foundation wouldn't exist without your resources. And you've changed too," she paused, then added softly. "Dad." Marcus's head whipped around, his eyes wide with shock and hope and disbelief. "What?" "I said you've changed." "Dad." The word was still strange on her tongue, still new, but increasingly right. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve that. Any of it. Probably not." Isla agreed with a small smile. "But I'm giving it to you anyway, because I've learned that family isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. And I choose this. I choose us." Marcus pulled her into a hug, and for the first time, Isla let herself be held by her father. It wasn't perfect. The wounds weren't fully healed. The lost years couldn't be recovered. But it was real. And it was enough. That evening, Isla hosted dinner at her apartment, a gathering of all her families, Susan and David, Vivian and Marcus, divorced but learning to be friends, and James, her partner of 18 months, a fellow surgeon who understood the demands of her work and the complexity of her family. They sat around the table, laughing and talking and passing dishes. A patchwork family built from broken pieces and second chances. Vivian raised her glass. A toast to second chances, to found families, to my daughter who saved my life in more ways than one. To Isla. Everyone echoed, and she felt the love in the room wrap around her like a blanket. She looked around the table at all these people who had shaped her. Susan and David, who had raised her with endless love. Vivian, who had given her life and then given her away and spent 30 years regretting it. Marcus, who had made a terrible choice and was spending the rest of his life trying to make amends. And James, who loved her exactly as she was. This was family. Messy, complicated, imperfect, but real. "I have an announcement," Isla said suddenly, her heart pounding. Everyone turned to her curious. She reached for James's hand and he squeezed it encouragingly. "I'm pregnant." The room erupted. Susan crying, David laughing, Vivian's hand flying to her mouth, Marcus's eyes filling with tears. "Oh, sweetheart," Susan pulled her into a hug. "I'm so happy for you." "Congratulations, honey." David kissed her forehead. "You're going to be an amazing mother." Vivian approached slowly, tears streaming down her face. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to Isla's still flat stomach. Isla nodded, and Vivian placed her hand gently on her daughter's belly. "Thank you," Vivian whispered. "Thank you for letting me be part of this." "Always," Isla said softly. "You're my family now. All of you." Marcus hung back. Uncertain of his place in this moment, Isla caught his eye and smiled. "Come here, Dad." Marcus moved forward, and Isla took his hand and placed it on her stomach next to Vivian's. "You're going to be a grandfather," she said. "Both of you, along with Susan and David. This baby is going to have so much love, so many grandparents, so much family." Marcus sobbed openly, and Isla pulled him into a hug. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for giving me another chance, for letting me be part of this. Everyone deserves a second chance," Isla said, "even people who make terrible mistakes." They spent the rest of the evening celebrating, making plans, arguing good-naturedly about baby names and nursery colors and who would get to babysit first. And Isla felt a completeness she'd never known before, not because everything was perfect. It wasn't. Not because all wounds were healed, they weren't, but because she'd learned that family was something you built, day by day, choice by choice, forgiveness by forgiveness. 5 years later, Isla stood in the maternity ward, holding her newborn daughter, a tiny, perfect miracle with amber eyes. Vivian stood beside her, tears streaming down her face as she looked at her granddaughter. "She's beautiful. Have you chosen a name?" Isla looked at Susan on her other side, then at David and Marcus waiting in the doorway with James. "Vivian Susan Reeves," she said softly, "after the two mothers who taught me what love really means." Vivian's sob was audible. "Are you sure? I don't deserve that." "Yes, you do," Isla said firmly. "You made a mistake 30 years ago, but you've spent every day since trying to make it right, trying to be better. Trying to love me the way you couldn't then." She looked at Susan. "And Mom, you raised me. You made me who I am. You taught me that family is about choice and commitment and showing up every single day. I want my daughter to carry both your names, to honor both the mothers who shaped me." Susan was crying too now. "I'm honored, sweetheart." So honored. Isla placed baby Vivian Susan in Vivian's arms and watched her birth mother hold her granddaughter with the tenderness she'd once shown Isla for 10 precious minutes. The circle was closing, not perfectly, not without scars, but whole nonetheless. Marcus approached slowly, his eyes on the baby. "May I?" Vivian carefully transferred the baby to Marcus's arms, and Isla watched her father hold his granddaughter for the first time. "Hello, little one," Marcus whispered. "I'm your grandfather, and I promise you, I will never make the mistakes with you that I made with your mother. I will show up. I will be present. I will love you with everything I have." He looked at Isla, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you. For this. For everything. For giving me a family I don't deserve." "You're doing the work to deserve it," Isla said gently. "That's what matters." David and Susan took their turns holding the baby. Then James, looking terrified and awed and completely in love. And Isla looked around at all these people, her families, plural, complicated, beautiful. She'd spent 30 years wondering where she came from. Now she knew. She came from loss and love, from mistakes and redemption, from two families who had shaped her in different ways, and she'd spent 30 years wondering where she belonged. Now, surrounded by the people who had chosen her and whom she had chosen in return, she finally knew the answer. She belonged right here. The foundation continued to grow, helping thousands of children and families, providing resources and support and hope. Vivian's memoir inspired a documentary that won awards and changed conversations about adoption nationwide. Marcus stepped down as CEO of Monroe Pharmaceuticals to focus full-time on the foundation and his family. The family he'd almost lost. The family he was rebuilding one day at a time. Susan and David were the most devoted grandparents imaginable, babysitting, reading stories, spoiling little Vivian Susan with love and attention. And Isla continued her work as a surgeon, saving lives, training the next generation, making a difference one patient at a time. On Vivian Susan's 5th birthday, the whole family gathered at Isla's house for a celebration. The little girl ran between her grandparents, collecting hugs and presents and attention, completely secure in the knowledge that she was loved by so many people. Isla watched from the kitchen, James's arm around her waist, and felt a profound sense of peace. "You okay?" James asked softly. "More than okay." Isla smiled. "I'm happy." And she was, because she'd learned that the worst moments of our lives can lead us exactly where we need to be. That mistakes don't define us, our choices do. That forgiveness isn't about what people deserve. It's about what we need to move forward. That family isn't about biology or perfection, it's about showing up, day after day, choice after choice. And that love doesn't divide, it multiplies. She'd saved her birth mother's life on an operating table 5 years ago. But in doing so, she'd saved her own life too. She'd found her family, all of them, the ones who raised her and the ones who gave her life, the ones who made mistakes and the ones who helped her heal. And she'd learned that second chances are real, that broken things can be rebuilt, that redemption is possible, that love in all its complicated, messy, imperfect forms is always worth fighting for. Little Vivian Susan ran up to her, arms outstretched. "Mama, come play with us." Isla scooped up her daughter and carried her outside, where all her families were waiting. And as she looked around at these people who had shaped her, who had hurt her, who had healed her, who had chosen her, she felt complete, not because everything was perfect, but because it was real. And real was enough. Real was everything. If this story moved you, if it made you think about forgiveness or family or second chances, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below about a choice that changed your life, about forgiveness you've given or received, about the families we're born into and the families we choose. Hit that like button if you believe in redemption. If you believe people can change, if you believe that our worst mistakes don't have to define us, share this story with someone who needs to hear about second chances, someone who's struggling with forgiveness, someone who's trying to rebuild something broken. And subscribe to MR WELLINGTON Story Hour for more stories that will make you think, feel, and believe in the power of love and redemption. Because everyone deserves a second chance, even the people who hurt us most, even ourselves. Thank you for listening to Isla's story, to Vivian's story, to Marcus's story, to the story of a family that was broken and rebuilt, that was lost and found, that was given away and reclaimed. May we all have the courage to face our mistakes, the strength to ask for forgiveness, and the grace to give it. Until next time, this is Mr. Wellington Story Hour. Remember, your past doesn't define your future. Your choices do. Choose love. Choose forgiveness. Choose family.